Do you accept that the Americans were sold a pup here?
Pierce, thank you for having me. I think actually, Pierce, we're going to look back at this as a war that was as consequential as perhaps if the West had information in 1936 to act against Nazi Germany. We have to put this in perspective. Wars take time. We see the face of the regime. They're an evil monster. They're hitting their own allies. How could we even conceive that we would not take the opportunity to eliminate this before it grows? And the shock, Pierce, is that I have people like Mehdi, who's going to join us shortly, and people all over these kind of this liberal fantasy land that you can transplant what you hear in the Oxford corridors if you just act nice and you kind of reason with them. Well, maybe they want to bomb, but they're not really going to use it. It's only for civilian energy. What are we talking about? Wake up. This is the face of terror with the bomb, and it's being stopped. And therefore, I think President Trump, Prime Minister Netanyahu, and it should be the entire Western world, has an opportunity to stop this before it happens. And I think, if anything, it's praiseworthy, Pierce.
Okay, Mehdi Hassan, it's praiseworthy.
Well, it's not praiseworthy. The entire war has been a disaster. I think everyone agrees on that. Even the Israeli opposition agrees it's been a disaster, the way Netanyahu and Trump have handled it. I think any objective person can look at the state of this war, even if you are pro the US government, pro the Israeli government, and say it's been a success. But let's put that to one side. I want to take on board what Doran said across the board, because a lot of it was pure projection. I mean, I'm hearing him talk about monsters in charge of governments, the face of terror, nuclear weapons. Who are we talking about here, Iran or Israel? Because I would ask a few questions for your viewers to consider today as they listen to Doran. Which country in the Middle East has nuclear weapons? It's not Iran, it's Israel. Which country in the Middle East has not signed the NPT, the Non-Proliferation Treaty? It's not Iran, it's Israel. Which country in the Middle East is defying a UN Security Council resolution calling for that country to open up its nuclear facilities to IAEA inspectors? It's not Iran, it's Israel. Which country in the Middle East attacked 6 countries in the Middle East last year? 6. It wasn't Iran, it was Israel. So Iran, for all its many sins and crimes, is not the rogue nuclear state in the Middle East right now. That country is Israel. As you said, Piers, in your introduction, global public opinion has made it very clear that they see Israel as the threat to regional and international peace right now. You pointed out, Piers, that it's Benjamin Netanyahu dragging American Republican presidents into wars of choice, Iraq in 2002-3, and now Iran in 2025-2026.
Comparing Iran to Israel, who's Iran? Well, they've developed a global terror regime that stretches from the Middle East through Latin America into Europe. They have the Houthis who've stopped shipping and have fired missiles and weapons both at Israel and U.S. assets. They created Hezbollah, the world's largest terror organization. That is also one of the largest drug organizations.
Actually, you created Hezbollah by illegally invading Lebanon.
Who committed October 7th. They just killed 30,000 of their people in the streets for protesting. I mean, do we need such a projection? I mean, only an idiot would actually say we need a projection to understand what Iran's intent is. We don't even need to try. They keep shoving it in your face, Mehdi. You're in absolute denial. And so is Candace Owens, and so is Tucker Carlson. And President Trump, thank God,
I'm not here to speak for. Hold on, Doran. Let me respond. You said a lot there. I'm not here to speak for Tucker Carlson or Candace Owens, who I've been very critical of. I'm not here to speak for Iran, who I've been very critical of. I'm here to talk about facts. You say projection. Let's just deal with your little speech in 2 ways. Number one, even if I were to accept your premise that Iran's nuclear program was a threat, even though the IAEA and US intelligence say it wasn't, but let's accept your premise that it was a threat. This is not the way you stop a nuclear program. We had the JCPOA, which Israel opposed, Donald Trump opposed. Iran was enriching at 3.67%, had no pathway to a bomb under the JCPOA, as every major disarmament and nuclear expert said at the time. It was Israel, Netanyahu, Trump that opposed this, and now we have them at 60% enriched uranium because of the actions of Israel and Donald Trump. So if you claim to want to stop Iran from having a nuclear weapon, you've done a very bad job of doing that. In fact, if you're the Iranian leadership now, you probably want a bomb more now than ever before because you've been attacked by Israel 2 years running. That's one point. On the point about projection, the point I'm making is this, Doran, and you dodged it, so let me ask it again. The only country in the Middle East right now that can put its finger on a button and fire a nuke is Israel. The only country threatening to fire the nuke it has, Ben-Gvir smiled and nodded the other day when an Israeli journalist suggested nuking Iran, is Israel. Why is your country, Doron, you're a spokesman for the military, in violation of UN Resolution 487, which was unanimously passed, including by the Reagan administration in 1981, calling for Israel to open up its nuclear facilities to the IAEA? Why wouldn't you allow IAEA inspectors to look at your illicit secret nuclear weapons program?
First of all, I think you and I both know that there are no binding United Nations resolutions against Israel. Not in
yes,
any
there is.
sphere.
UN Security Council Resolution 487.
There's not a
You're wrong, Doron.
Series
You're wrong, Doron.
UN resolution.
You're wrong.
And there is a number of.
You're lying. Everyone can Google it right now. UN Security Council Resolution
against Iran's
487. People can Google it.
Mehdi, you just said it yourself.
You can talk over me.
Basically, just
UN Security Council Resolution.
You're saying that Israel.
487.
I'm sorry, Mehdi, one second. We can't.
You can talk over me. I'll wait and make my point again. Okay, well, let me just make one point and then I'll let you speak indefinitely. UN Resolution 487. You can Google it right now. People can watch it at home. In 1981, the Reagan administration voted for it. It calls on Israel to urgently open up its facilities to IAEA controls. That is a UN Security Council resolution which is binding under international law. Israel has been in violation of it for 45 years. Why are you in violation of it? And do you accept that Israel has nuclear weapons? If you won't accept that, why should we take anything you say seriously on anything else?
It is not a binding resolution. However, I want to get your point because I think you just answered it for me. You said that this has been Israel, according to you, has been in violation for 40 years. So therefore, you're assuming Israel's had a nuclear weapon for 40 years. Can you tell me one time, Mehdi?
It has.
One single time.
Are you denying
Israel
that?
has threatened another country with nuclear war. Can you tell me, Mehdi, one time when an Israeli prime minister under an entire command center would have the ability with massive controls. Just one second.
I answered your question. I noticed that Doron said that Iran killed 30,000 of its people a few minutes ago. Now he's saying 40,000. By the end of this discussion, it'll be 100,000. It's funny how they inflate the numbers of people killed in Iran, but never recognize the 100,000 people you killed in Gaza, that your military killed in Gaza, 100,000 people minimum killed in Palestine, which are actually verified numbers by international organizations like the Lancet Medical Journal. You deny those. But let's put that to one side and deal with some of the stuff you've been saying. Number one, just some fact checks. A UN Security Council resolution is binding under international law. The Reagan administration voted for it, and you've never followed it. You proudly say you haven't signed the NPT. People watching at home will laugh their heads off. You're basically saying, because we didn't sign an international treaty, we don't have to follow international law. So then why doesn't Iran just pull out of the NPT? Why doesn't everyone just pull out of the NPT and do what Israel did? You say Israel reserves the right to defend itself. That old chestnut. No other country in the Middle East is allowed to defend itself. Israel is the country that bombed, count them, 6 countries in the Middle East last year. I can't think of a single country on planet Earth, aside from the US and Israel, that bombed half a dozen countries in the calendar year 2025. That is your country that you're defending, a rogue nation that bombs whoever it sees fit and then claims to be a victim. You say that, for example, you mentioned in your comments, you said 1967 we were attacked. Complete flat falsehood. Israel attacked first in 1967. Everyone knows that. It's a documented fact. You can call it a preemptive war, but you can't just lie on here and say you were attacked. You were not. You said that Iran pioneered the use of terrorism in the Middle East. Actually, that was the Zionist gangs. That was the Stern Gang and the Irgun who blew up British diplomats, bombed the King David Hotel, hung British sergeants, attacked British civilians and military and Arabs. It was actually Jewish and Zionist terror gangs that pioneered terrorism in the Middle East 100 years ago. So a lot of your facts are just completely wrong, and you're dodging Piers' central point, which is that you do have nukes. You know you have nukes. You're not allowed to say you have nukes, which makes this whole conversation so absurd. But the idea that you would come on TV and go after someone else's civil nuclear program. Remember, the US says Iran did not have a weapons program, while you yourself have weapons. That's the US intelligence community's view. They said last year. That is what the US said last year. The US annual.
Then why do we need the JCPOA?
Let me read out the quote to you.
Program that you support.
Let me read out the quote to you.
A JCPOA,
let me read out the quote to you. If you stop interrupting me. I didn't interrupt you, Doron. You spoke for a while. In 2025, this is what the Director of National Intelligence said. We continue to assess Iran is not building a nuclear weapon and that Khamenei has not reauthorized the nuclear weapons program he suspended in 2003. A country that doesn't have nukes is being lectured by you, a country that does have nukes. It would be funny if it wasn't so tragic and you hadn't killed so many Iranian kids as part of your supposedly disarmament program.
آنچه در مورد ما میگویند